Welcome to Elevating Your Life, where each episode is dedicated to sharing valuable information, useful techniques, and empowering inspiration so that you can experience personal and physical abundance. Success and happiness are within your reach. I am your go-to gal who will help you find your happiness triggers and a true elevated life. I am your host, Paula Vail. Hello and welcome. So happy to have you with us today. I have a beautiful guest today to share with you. Today we are chatting with Jessi Beyer. She is a speaker, mental health advocate, and the author of How to Heal, a practical guide to a natural therapies you can use to release your trauma. This is her book. It's absolutely fantastic. Jessi is on a mission to help others. And first off, I want to say a heartfelt thank you for that mission, Jessi. You are an angel, and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the time.
Oh, I'm so grateful to have you here. Well, I would love to open up with you sharing a bit of your background and what triggered you to write this amazing book and what put you on the mission that you're on today.
Absolutely. So like Paula said, I'm a speaker and an author, and my mental health interest started when I was in high school. I was really struggling with my mental health. You know, I was depressed, I was self-harming, I was really struggling with food and my body image and things like that. And I was also in a relationship with someone who was also really struggling with his mental health. You know, he was depressed as well, suicidal as well, and, you know, really struggling with that. And unfortunately, I decided that I was going to be his everything. I was going to be his therapist. I was going to be his best friend. I was going to take his world and put it on my shoulders and become completely responsible for his happiness and his mental health. Mm-hmm. As you can probably guess, that's not the best way to approach supporting someone who's struggling with their mental health. And unfortunately, that relationship ended with his suicide attempt and my kind of decline into further mental health struggles. Now, it took me years to be able to look back on that experience and see that it wasn't something that had to be shoved in the shadows and left alone and not spoken about, but something that I could actually use. And a lot of that process really came from me having conversations with my friends and classmates and hearing how much me opening up and sharing about my story can make an impact on their lives. Just those little one-on-one conversations made so much of a difference. And the more I had them, the more I became comfortable with having them. And the more I thought, well, what if I did this on a larger scale? What if I spoke to a group? What if I stood up on stage and talked about this? What if I wrote a book about this? And honestly, How to Heal is pretty much the Bible of everything I wish I knew when I was struggling with my mental health and when I was healing from the trauma of my friend's suicide attempt, because I thought you could only go to talk therapy. I thought it was talk therapy or bust, and that was really your only option. So being able to recognize that there's so much more than that, and there's so many more options that are natural and integrative in mind, body, and more comfortable than just sitting on someone's chair, I was like, I need to write this because this could have changed my healing journey completely. And I know it can do the same for other trauma survivors. So in a nutshell, that's kind of my story and why I wanted to write the book that I did.
Yes. And you do share so many different therapies and different things, and we'll discuss those a little bit, that really, you know, many of us may not have even considered or thought of. First off, though, I would like to ask you, why is trauma so different from other mental health concerns?
Mm-hmm. I will preface this by saying that talk therapy is great and it's very well supported by research, but it's not always the best for trauma because of why trauma is different. Now, trauma, there is a very psychological brain-based reaction, right? You have that psychiatric condition, whether it's PTSD or adjustment disorder or whatever, but there's also a very somatic piece. When you're in that trauma, when you're in that traumatic incident, you have hormones running crazy, emotions running crazy, and you often can't get those fully out through your trauma, right? You can't fight that person off. You can't stop the car accident from happening, whatever that is. And so all of that kind of stays stuck in your body. And there's that very somatic piece and that stuck energy that isn't necessarily addressed with very cognitive-based therapies. Now, like I said, talk therapy is fantastic, but it's a very logical approach you're sitting there, you're talking about it, you're using very cognitive ways of working through your struggles. But when you get triggered or you have a flashback, you're sent to your limbic system and your hindbrain, which is not cognitive. It's very primal, it's very visceral. And so having a therapy that works with that works with that mind-body approach and that kind of primal part of ourselves really is good for trauma, again, because it has that somatic piece that differentiates it from so many other different psychiatric conditions.
Yes, yes. So share a few of the examples of the therapies that can help release that stuck energy, and what a perfect description that is, Jessi, because it is a stuck energy.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah. I mean, when I talk to trauma survivors, a lot of them say throughout their healing journey, they feel like a weight has been lifted from their body, and they can literally feel that peace move through them and move out of them and things like that. So I completely agree. As far as some of the therapies that I talk about 9 different ones, things like equine assisted therapy, ecotherapy, craniosacral therapy, flower essence therapy, dance movement therapy, EMDR, mindfulness and meditation. There's so many amazing ones in there that address different aspects of trauma and also work with different types of personalities and what they're looking for in their trauma healing journey. Now, I could go on for hours. I could write a whole book about those therapies. Haha.
Yes.
But they're really great approaches. And like I said, they kind of tie into that primal, visceral part of us because they're movement based, or they're outdoors, or they're working with animals, which again kind of ties into the base of who we are if we look back at how we've evolved over time. And I think that's something that can make these especially powerful.
Yes, yes. Well, let's dive into a couple of those. The movement therapy, what exactly is that?
Yeah, so dance movement therapy, contrary to its name, is not really dancing at all. It actually got its base in the American modern dance movement, which is why it's called dance movement therapy, but it's not, you're not going to tango across the room in order to heal from trauma. What that therapy really looks at is honoring what your body wants to do naturally. So for example, I went to dance movement therapy to kind of try it out so I could write accurately about it. And I went in and I said, my shoulder's a little sore. I was swimming a lot yesterday or whatever it was. And she's like, okay, well, what does your shoulder naturally want to do? And I'm like, well, it kind of wants to creep up towards my neck here. She's like, okay, just follow that movement, explore that movement. And so over the course of the next couple minutes, I found myself following that and drawing into this really protective position with my hands crossed over my chest and kind of holding on to the top of my shirt. And then that led into a discussion about, openness versus being closed, and protectiveness and being weak, and kind of how I view that in my life. But it was all through that following of what my body knows it needs to do. Another cool aspect of dance movement therapy is a lot of times symbols and metaphors will come in. So the dance movement therapist that I spoke to, her name was Barbara, and she told me about a young client who was struggling with trauma. And so she asked that client to feel what it would feel like to be that client's favorite superhero and to stand like that superhero. How would they stand? How would they walk? How would they move? And kind of reclaiming that power. As another example, there was a client of hers who had been sexually abused in her foster home, and all she wanted to do was just push and push and push. So Barbara gave her literally a pillow that she could sit there and push against. And then the more she did that, the more she was able to open up, successfully push her sexual abuser off of her, and talk about what happened to her and move into the healing process. So it's this really incredible way of tapping into what your body knows it needs to do, allowing yourself to do that, and having the safe space and the support of a therapist to guide you through whatever comes up as you move through those actions.
Yes, yes. And something else in your book that I absolutely loved was, it's okay to allow yourself to learn and heal at the same time. Oh my gosh, Jessi, that's powerful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Because it is a constant movement, isn't it? Moving on, would you say, with trauma?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think a lot of people think that you do this work, you get healed, and then you're good to go for the rest of your life. And unfortunately, that's not always true. You might encounter a new scenario down the road that's going to set you back a few steps. You might meet someone that reminds you of someone, and again, that bumps you back a few steps. But you're building up this repertoire of tools and knowledge and ways for you to cope with those triggers and flashbacks and setbacks so that you can continue to move forward. You know, trauma isn't something that you just get rid of and it's done. And honestly, I don't feel like it should be, because when you've survived a trauma and you've learned to heal from that, you are stronger as a human. I don't really think there's any better way to gain empathy and compassion for your fellow humans than going through something so traumatic and coming out on the other side of it. You know, you learn so much about yourself and about what you want out of life and your priorities and your strength and so many things. So I think once you're able to heal and able to look back on that moment and say, hey, I can use this for good, that's really powerful. And that's kind of what I did too. You know, I spent so many years resenting my mental health struggles and resenting that relationship and that part of my life. Finally, I was like, this is ridiculous. I can't resent part of myself and try to grow and develop at the same time. You know, I have to look back on that with grace and with empathy and be able to use that as a tool for change. So I think it is absolutely acceptable and absolutely encouraged to learn and grow at the same time that you're healing, and recognizing that those two trains are very intertwined, honestly, throughout the rest of your life.
Yes. And what is the difference of the effect of seeing yourself as a victim compared to as a survivor?
Yeah. Well, even just in the way that you said that, there's a difference there, right? You said victim and then you said survivor. And there was strength and there was passion. I know, we're like screaming from the rooftops here. Yeah, but that's the thing. You know, a victim implies that something horrible happened to you, that you were powerless, that you can never grow and change from that spot. And while that's how you may be feeling immediately after your trauma or in the beginning stages of healing, the word survivor implies growth. It implies power. It implies an ability for you to move past what happened to you. Furthermore, in the legal system and the healthcare system, they're probably calling you a victim because that's the terminology that they use. Mm-hmm. And so having two very powerful entities, the legal system and the healthcare system, implying that you're a victim and implying that you need sympathy and pity and stuff, that's hurtful and that's stifling. So switching your own vocabulary and the vocabulary of your friends and family members to survivor can be really empowering and kind of give you that oomph you need to actually take those first steps towards healing.
Yes. And isn't it amazing, Jessi, how something as simple as what we label ourselves is huge in the steps we take and our growth. It really is.
Absolutely. And I don't talk about this in my book, but something that I do personally is I don't like to say I am depressed or I am bipolar or I am whatever. I like to say that it's something that I have or something that I'm working through. So it doesn't define me. Depression is not my identity. It's something that I have, like cancer or a broken bone, and it's something that I'm working through. That shift was really, really powerful for me. And that was honestly something I implemented years ago, you know, quickly after my mental health struggles. And that was a huge, huge shift for me as well.
Yeah, because working through, that's actually positive.
Mm-hmm.
That's positive steps. I love that. I love that. So,
thank you.
With the challenge as someone who is with someone, a relative or friend or family member going through trauma, what are the best ways we can support them?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You know, people who try to support someone who's struggling with their mental health or who's healing from trauma, they come in with the best of intentions. They love this person. They want to support them. But unfortunately, some of the most common things to say and do are not helpful. You know, you come in and you want to try to fix them, or you want to tell them, it's okay, it's all going to be okay, or I'm so sorry this happened to you. Those aren't really helpful. You know, you're not acknowledging that where they are right now is where they are, and their feelings are their feelings. And so what I like to teach people instead is to hold the space for them. Now, basically what this means is that you're not going to try to do anything. There's no magic words that you have to say. It's simply being with that person and letting them know that they are loved, that their emotions are valid, and that you are there for them if they ever need you to come to them with anything or have any requests for help. Now, one of the therapists that I spoke to while writing my book, she told me this incredible story that really illustrates the concept of holding the space. Now, she was working with a young client on an equine assisted therapy facility, and they were playing hide and go seek. And the girl was like, hey, Sally, let's go hide in the dumpster. So Sally and the girl, they went and hid in the dumpster. And as you might imagine, in a dumpster, it's dark and it's smelly and there's something dripping over your shoulder. And it's just not a fun place to be. Yeah. Now, this girl looked at Sally and she said, hey, Sal, this is kind of like life, isn't it? And that moment just hit Sally so hard, because for that girl who was struggling with PTSD, that was her life. It was dark, it was dirty, it was smelly, it was not a fun place to be. But because of her PTSD, she couldn't just hop out whenever she wanted to. Sally, on the other hand, she wasn't struggling with PTSD. She could get out and go about her day whenever she needed to. But with her choice to sit in that girl's darkness and to sit and be there with her, that is the best way that you can support someone. So it's a really good lesson, because you can kind of let some of that pressure off your shoulders of, am I going to say the right thing? Am I going to do the right thing? And just recognize that you sitting there telling them, I hear you and I'm here for you, and then shutting up and holding their hands, that is the most powerful thing that you can do for them. They're not broken. They're not about to break. They don't need to be handled with kid gloves or anything like that. They're still your friend or family member. They just need a little extra support and a little extra recognition that you're there and that what they're going through is completely valid.
Oh, that's a powerful message, because that is a challenge. And so many of us, when we have someone we know going through something, we can feel helpless with not knowing what to do. Thank you so much for that. Wow.
Absolutely.
Yes. And something else in your book that I absolutely loved was, you mentioned being a person of strength inspires others. And that's something that survivors may not realize, but their strength and their survivingness and moving through it really can be a shining light for others. I mean, that's what you are. That is a powerful statement, Jessi.
Thank you. Thank you. And that kind of ties into what I said earlier about how you are a person of empathy and a person of strength after you've been through something like this and you've survived and you've healed. Now, some people like myself, they want to take up an advocacy role. They want to speak about it and talk about it and be very active in the mental health community. But if you don't want to make your trauma a center point in your life, even after you've healed, just by being strong, that's going to emanate from you. That's going to resonate with other people. And that in itself, without you saying a single word, is inspirational and a help to others just in and of itself.
Yes, yes. What has it meant to you, Jessi, being an example of personal strength, someone who has moved through and a survivor, and you're out there now with your mission to help others? What has that meant to you?
It's been everything, honestly. Like I said, I could have let that time in my life be this black mark or this scar that I just kind of swept under the rug and didn't want to talk about. But I decided I didn't want to do that. That wasn't very fun. And it's such a blessing to do what I do, because after every presentation, after every podcast interview, I get at least one message or one person coming up to me and saying, thank you, and sharing their story, perhaps for the very first time. They've never had anyone in their lives where they feel safe opening up to them and feel like they're not going to be judged. So having the opportunity to be that person for someone else is the biggest blessing. Like, I cannot even put it into words how amazing that is, just to have that role in someone else's life and someone else's story. So it's been incredible, and it's such an honor and a blessing to be able to do what I do.
Yes, I just can only imagine, for one, how that makes you feel, and I can only imagine the amount of lives that you have made a difference in, Jessi.
Thank you.
Yes. And it is something that I've witnessed, is with knowing someone who's had trauma and a personal challenge and survived it, and can go through the years and then come to a point where they want to discuss it more. So would you say that's a way of they realizing their survival and they want to share it with others? That's a beautiful thing, isn't it?
It can be, absolutely. Now, when you're healing, there's no prerequisite that you have to share your story, right? Some people are never ready. Sometimes it takes them 20, 30, 50 years. Sometimes they never want to talk about it. But for me personally, and I know for a lot of other trauma survivors as well, getting to a point where you can talk about your story, whether that's with someone one-on-one or on more of a public platform like I do, that's very empowering, because you realize how much you can look back at something that hurt you and not feel those same emotions and that same pain. You know, when I could look back and I could tell my story without crying, I was like, whew, I've done some healing work here. I've done a lot of good in my life here. And I know that that's the same for a lot of other people too, that being able to, whether they want to or not, you know, but being able to talk about their story is a really powerful step.
Yes, that I can imagine what a step that would be. Gosh. Well, please take a moment, Jessi, to tell everyone where they can learn more about you and get a copy of your book, all of that, please.
Absolutely. So my book is available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble in paperback and ebook form. It is on Kindle Unlimited. So if you're a Kindle Unlimited reader, you can go ahead and get that there. But if you want a little bit of a sneak peek before you purchase the book, you can actually go to my website and download the first 3 chapters for free. That'll tell you about my story with trauma. It'll tell you about what trauma is, and it'll talk about some of the psychiatric diagnoses surrounding trauma. Now, the URL for that is jessibeyerinternational.com/chapters, and I'm pretty sure Paula is going to put that link in the show notes as well,
Yes.
so you can get that there.
Yes.
But other than that, I'm on Facebook and Instagram at Jessi Beyer International. So come say hi, send me a picture of your dog, you know, whatever. I'd love to connect with you guys.
Yes, yes. And your book is so powerful, and all the different techniques that you share really are eye-opening. I know for myself, I was like, wow, that, you know, that would make a big difference. You know, there's so many natural therapies out there, and that's really exciting, Jessi.
It is. Thank you.
Gosh.
Yeah. I know when I started writing this and talking to other people about this, they were like, I didn't know that any of these existed. And I'm like,
Yes.
that's the point. That's why we need to write this book. So I totally agree.
That's exactly how I reacted. Oh. Well, we have about 4 minutes left in the show. What last words do you want to share with everyone today, Jessi?
If you listeners get one thing out of this interview or out of my book, I want it to be that trauma is not something that's wrong. You know, you did not deserve what happened to you. You are not broken because of what happened to you. And it's not something that you need to be embarrassed about or ashamed of. If you can recognize that, hey, I can acknowledge that what I'm feeling is understandable, it is valid, it is reasonable, and I'm okay with that. You know, if you can give yourself that own acceptance, that's the first step towards healing. So if you don't learn any of the methods that we talk about, if you don't learn anything about how to support someone else, if you can just recognize and acknowledge to yourself that trauma is okay, that what happened to you was wrong and you didn't deserve it, but you have the strength and the will to heal from that, then my mission's accomplished. So that's my parting message for everyone here.
Oh, that is powerful. I am so grateful to you and so grateful for this book.
Thank you.
It really has opened my eyes to many things, you know, and really, we all have challenges and we all have things we've gone through in life that this book can make a difference for us. You know, everyone, it's just different degrees or, you know, different situations, but we all struggle at times with trauma.
I actually had one of my launch team readers tell me, she's like, I didn't apply to the launch team because I haven't had trauma. But once I read the book, I was like, whoa, I still learned so much from it. So yes. You're right on there.
Yes, yes. And it's so wonderful to see support for each other, the support you give to everyone. And so, you know, that's I think just such a message, Jessi, for everyone out there watching us today, to know that we support them and love them, and what you've offered is beautiful. And it's for someone who's with someone who has trauma, or someone who has experienced trauma and is a survivor.
Oh. I love that. Thank you.
Oh,
we're just gonna like walk around chanting "survivor" from now on. We're like, survivor.
Yes, I love it. I love it because we are all survivors, aren't we?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Every day of our life is, you know, our journey on our path. We're a survivor. We're, you know, our own light and energy and inspiration in the world. And that's a beautiful thing to know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It is.
Kind of a silly quote, but everyone has survived 100% of their worst days. So whatever you're going through now, you can survive too.
Oh, I love that.
Not my quote, but I love the quote.
Yeah, that's a great quote. Yes. And, you know, with the things we go through, we can meet someone and we don't have an idea of what they've gone through. And that I've always believed is been a big passion for me to just have compassion for others. You don't know why someone might be angry or someone might not be in a good mood. You don't know what their life is. And I value compassion, and you're writing this book and sharing is really showing compassion. Thank you, Jessi.
Thank you. Thank you. I love that mission.
Oh, thank you. Well, everyone out there, thank you for joining us. Love, hugs, and blessings. Jessi, love, hugs, and blessings. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.